Ever since the dawn of humankind, we've sought the origins of our life and its purpose. Some have chosen to look to science, religion, or philosophy for answers. Many have turned to the great masters such as Lao Tzu, the Buddha, and Jesus Christ for spiritual illumination. Still others have sought truth through their own direct experience. All of us are searching, knowingly or unknowingly, for enlightenment, truth, and harmony in our lives. This program, hosted by Dr. Gregory Penn, will help you aspire to a more fulfilling and rewarding life.
Every day we take a step, we understand. The closer that we get, we'll find in who we are. We choose between the left and right, the ups and downs, the darkness or the light. We'll find in who we are.
Good morning and welcome to Aspire. We're going to be working on one of the most difficult, most profound, and most effective of all spiritual techniques, yielding and bending. If there's anything we need in this lifetime, it's more tolerance. And through yielding and bending, we learn how to find the tolerance that is necessary for patience, understanding, and wisdom. Very important subject. In the second half of Aspire, we're going to have question and answer with that gregarious congregation of mine, and I hope you'll plan to stay tuned for this very important program. Come Aspire with us. It's early morning here, and I just wanted to have some quiet time with you before the congregation came and talk to you about, well, something very intimate and something that a lot of people don't talk about in the form of spirituality. You know, it seems that so much of today's spirituality is bent on the idea of having money, and they call it prosperity, or being a positive thinker, having a positive life, which I'm beginning to wonder, what is a positive life, and is it really possible? And then again, there's this other thing that keeps cropping up within us, this idea of what a quiet spirituality is all about, what real spiritual progression is in our living. One of the most interesting things that I've found out in myself, and I spent many years as a minister being very, aggressive. It was my idea to be aggressive, to help people have more and to be more and to do more. I took on a lot of responsibility for my congregation and the people that came. I slowly began to find out I wasn't really helping them, and the things that I was saying really weren't meaningful to them. I was adding to their confusion, and I was adding to their aggression, and slowly but surely I began to see that the spiritual path is a lot of the things that I had never considered before. In fact, in the past I would have thought that's the least of all spiritual things, and now I'm finding that the least is the greatest. And the teachings that Jesus had, that the first shall be last and the last shall be first, now make a lot of sense. This morning, my little discourse with you is about yielding. A few years ago, if you had told me to yield or surrender, I probably would have rebelled. I would have thought that yielding and surrendering meant resignation. Recently, I've become very, very interested, last 3 or 4 years, in the Tao. The Tao was written by a man by the name of Lao Tzu. A lot of people don't know whether or not he lived. Some people think he did, some people think he didn't. Some people think all he was a librarian. But I don't think anybody who wrote anything this beautiful and this profound, well, I think he'd have to be more than a librarian and also a person who actually lived. I'd like to share a little bit of this with you because it's so beautiful, and I have found in my own life it's one of the most vital and important keys to spirituality. Listen to this. Yield and overcome. Bend and be straight. Empty and be full. Wear out and be new. Have little and gain. Have much and be confused. This idea of yielding is a very important concept, isn't it? What does it mean when I yield? Some people think of yielding as a form of, resignation. Resignation is not what we're talking about here. What's it mean to resign, to give up? We resign a lot in life, and we give up a lot in life whenever we have given ourselves over to something that hurts us, that limits us. Let me give you an example of what it means to resign oneself to something. I resign myself to fear and anger a great deal whenever I give in to appearances and conditions. When I look at appearances and I look at conditions and I think to myself, nothing can be done. Those things are set. Those things are final. The power is out of me. I can't help myself. I can't find new joy. I can't find new inspiration. I just have to kind of look at things as they are and kind of gut it out, so to speak. That's when I've resigned. But what Lao Tzu is talking about here in the Tao is yielding, which is far different. As we learn to bend, as we learn to let go of some of our concepts and some of our fears, as we learn to broaden our point of view about ourselves and our life and the meaning of our life, now all of a sudden things can take on a different form, a different shape. You would be surprised the potentials that live within you right now that you have forgotten. You know, a lot of spirituality is not learning. In fact, a teacher such as myself can teach you nothing. All I can do is facilitate to you some methods and some ideas on how you can practice these things and learn to remember. Because that's what the work is about. It is to remember what you and I have chosen to forget. We've forgotten that we are spiritual beings. We have forgotten that we are unlimited by our nature. And in essence, we have forgotten that we are one in God. We have, so to speak, resigned ourselves to the world. We've resigned ourselves to what other people say about us. We've resigned ourselves to what the world thinks about us. And because of that, we've lost our identity. We've lost our sense of purpose. This work is a work of remembering. It's to remember who I am, to remember what I am. And when you're remembering, you're in a far different place than if you are searching. A lot of people search and search and search for truth and never find it. It's because they're looking with their rigidity and they're looking with their mind, and they forget that the search is really not a search. It is a quiet, peaceful remembering. I want to give you some insights into this because it is very, very important that we understand what it means to yield. To yield is to give over. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane did something very interesting. Here he is faced with his own death, a life and death situation, so to speak. And what does he do? He gets very rigid in the beginning. He says, "Take this cup from me. I don't want it." That is where he's being rigid. But after a period of meditation and prayer in the garden, he learns to bend. And he says, "If this cup may not pass from me except that I drink it, thy will be done." That's the key. You find a bending. He wasn't trying to manipulate. He was trying to understand. I'd like to give you some how-tos. Again, you know, I can give you platitudes, and I can tell you that bending is more important than being rigid. I can tell you that the spiritual growth is not a matter of search, it's a matter of remember, but that won't mean anything to you. It will only mean something to you when you search on your own, when you have your own beginnings, your own remembering. So let me give you some ideas, some practice ideas, and I'd like you at home to write me. Let me know what's going on in your life. How is this affecting you? Is it helping you? And maybe I can help you a little bit, even more in future programs. The first thing is, in learning to bend, is to the understanding that we need that we don't always have to be right. A lot of us want to always be right. I don't know what the big thing is about being right. But I'll tell you, one of the great bendings you will have for good and for truth is to learn that you're not always right and to admit it to yourself. We're not always right. I'm not always right. A lot of the teachings that I used to believe in the form of affirmation and denial and judgments and thinking that everybody should be happy and everybody should be healthy, it's not true. Everybody needs to be right where they are. And I learned that the greatest spurt of my spirituality came in the moment when I accepted that I have been wrong. And it's okay to be wrong. The only trouble we have with that is our pride and our dignity get in the way of being wrong. But really, what are pride and dignity as compared to truth and the light? It must be more important that you want the truth and the light than your pride and your dignity. Now, no one can make you believe that. No one can make you understand that. That's something you have to come to on your own. But I think a lot of you out there understand what I'm trying to say to you. It's time to let go of the pride. It's time to let go of the dignity. It's time to be honest and true with ourselves. Another point that is very important, our judgmental attitudes. We have a lot of them. You know, we do live in a world where we need our judgment. We need to look at things and to understand things as they are. But that's as far as it should go. It should never go into labeling. You would be surprised the potential of your worst enemy. Have you ever thought that your worst enemy, whoever that person may be, is loved by someone, is cared for by many people, and has a great potential and capacity for being a very loving, caring person? If you look at your enemy that way, how can they be your enemy anymore? Now you're bending. You're not resigning yourself. You are yielding to the truth in them and the love that lives within them. Imagine if you could look at every person that way, with the idea that not everyone's bad, right or wrong, good or bad. People are what they are. They're just as they are. And they have a right to be on this planet and to learn the lessons that are necessary in their life. So let people be where they are. And if they need to be cruel, they don't need your and my criticism for their cruelty. If they are uncaring, they don't need our judgment in their misunderstanding and their lack of understanding. The last thing, and this is a very important one, accept things as they are. Don't try to change things so much. You know, the thing that you want most lives in here. You won't find it out there. You're not going to find it in the world. You're not going to find it in objects or things. The thing that you and I want the most, we've always had. It's in our heart. So stop trying to change things outside of yourself with the idea of thinking that you're going to be a happier person. The happiness that you want lives within you. When we start taking this concept and working with the Tao in this way, we find that the greatest strength of all is not in being rigid, not in being hard fast, but in being compassionate and loving at all times. The greatest strength is to be loving in the face of a tragedy. Thank you for letting me be with you for these brief moments. We'll be right back. Thank you. Thank you. Probably the most difficult thing for us to learn to do is to know when to yield, when to stop. Yielding is very important. And in the Tao, it's talked about a great deal, that the greatest strength is learning to bend, to yield, not to break. We think in terms of resignation, as we talked about earlier, where we resign ourselves to a problem. So maybe you have some question and answers on this. If you do, raise your hand now. Forever hold your peace on this subject.
Is there any such thing as security, really?
That's such an interesting question. All my life I've sought security. All my life. And I've seen other people seek it too. And we have misinterpreted security. We've always thought about it as if I have this job or if I have this money. I've seen people who have literally millions of dollars in, quote, securities. And they're the most insecure people I've ever met in my life. In fact, the more money they have, the more they worry about how to keep it. And it becomes a round robin. If they're not worrying about how to make it, they're worrying about how to keep it. And then I've seen people in my career who have thought that security was in people. If they were married to someone, they'd always have this partner. And then all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, the partner goes away. Maybe they pass on or they decide to leave or whatever. The only security you have, now get this, please listen. The only security you really have is in yourself. No, not you, the person, but in yourself as you are. Your security is knowing who you and I really are. That's the only security we've got. Anything else can be changed. That's why I urge you constantly to practice looking inside of yourself, to practice not taking yourself for granted and thinking you know. You know, you may think in one part of you that you're a very angry person, and we're going to be working on anger in the future in a workshop. And it's true, we are, but that's not the totality of us. There are the other parts of us. The secure part is knowing yourself. Who are you really? Behind all of the muck and the mire and the misunderstanding, to know yourself. That's your only security. And you know what's interesting about that is we have such apathy about learning about that. It's very interesting. I've been doing this stuff for 15 years, and I find that people are most apathetic about the most powerful and beautiful part of them, themselves. They're not apathetic about money, and they're not apathetic about what other people think of them, and they're not apathetic about their opinions, but they're apathetic about who and what they are. It's a fascinating thing. If we suffer from anything in this world, it's apathy. We just don't seem to care. We have certain things we say, this is me, this is a part of me, this is a part of me, this is a part of me, and this is the finished product, this is all you get. And I'm going to go the rest of my life living like that. And then they find that life treats them very difficultly and presents very serious challenges, and they say, well, where is all that stuff I built up? Where is that me, that I depended upon? It was an illusion. Know thyself. That's all we're about here, is finding out who we are. And like I've told you 1,000 times, and I'll tell you it again, when you find you, you will have found love. And when you have found love, you will have found God. And when you have found God again, you will have found yourselves. And so with that, let's take another offering. Next question. Arthur.
How do you really find yourself when society delegates you to one person?
Yes. This, Arthur brings up a very important point. Most of us have been labeled. Maybe you have not been labeled as much as some of us others, but I will tell you a little bit about it. When you're a minister, and I've changed from my role from being a minister to a teacher, I'm more comfortable with that because a minister sounds so final. Minister, thump, last word on everything, and I'm certainly not the last word on everything. You begin to see that to be yourself is a very difficult thing because other people want you to be something that you are not comfortable with or that you're really not. And Arthur's question is very valuable, and also to you. How do you do it? Are you a product of yourself, or are you a product of what they told you to be? Who are you? Are you a secretary, a doctor, a lawyer, a minister? Or are you more than that? Are you the loving husband, the loving wife, the loving grandson, the loving child? Who are you? If people really love us, they'll love us for what we are. And Arthur is in essence baiting me to say this to you, and I'll take the bait because I love it. Be yourself in spite of them. That takes courage. Be yourself in spite of them. And he's right. That's all you can be. I told you the story about this man that I was counseling. I only saw him once. It's really funny. I was only here a week. This was 10 years ago. He was dying in the hospital, and I went out to see him. And he was laying there, and I introduced myself. Hi, I said, hello, I'm Gregory Penn, and this man is obviously dying. And he's choking, and he said to me just a few words, and all he said was, it could have been more. Could have been more. I found out later after his death that he did everything everybody wanted him to. He was the shining example of everything, but he recognized there could have been more. I say be more. Be yourself. And sometimes that'll be less, and sometimes that'll be more, but you can't be worried about what other people think of you. Again, please remember that as long as you live. If what I think of you is more important than what you know about yourself, you have deep, serious problems. Forget me. Love yourself. Know yourself. Be comfortable with yourself. Okay? Next question.
How can you yield to what everybody else wants you to be and still be true to that inner part of yourself?
You can't. You can't. Betty brings up a powerful question, and I hope you heard the question. How can you yield to be what everybody wants you to be and still be yourself? You can't. And there will come a time when what you are is much more important than what they want for you to be, and that something very interesting occurs. You will step out of the circle of those people. And that's the scary part. You will leave that. Let me again reiterate something. If I love you, if I really love you, I'm going to respect you right where you are. You may not be the person that I thought you should be, and you may not be the person I expected you to be, but if I really love you, I'm going to look at you and go, you're different, but you're neat. And you have the right to be who you are, and you know something? Domo arigato to you. I thank you very much for being that. That's hard, Betty. You can't be what everybody wants you. Now, you can bend. You can yield and bend, and you can look at maybe people want some part of you, some things for you, and you say to yourself, people want certain things out of me. I don't do, for instance, if somebody wants me to do a funeral, I'll do their funeral. If they say to me, we want you to do a eulogy, I won't do the eulogy. That's as far as I'll bend. And if the eulogy is more important to you than my ceremony, then get someone else to do it. Do you understand? I bend, but I won't break. And that's what I'm saying to you, Betty. I think we all have some basic principles, don't we? That we live by. I want to be loving. I want to be forgiving. I want to be compassionate. I want to, if I'm going to live with someone or with people, I want to feel comfortable I can make mistakes. How about you? Huh? I want to feel comfortable that if I blow it, I'm going to be forgiven or understood or I can talk about it. Now, if somebody can't live with you like that, isn't it time to make a change? To at least think about it? I'm not saying necessarily even make a physical change, but to make a change. You can bend, just don't break. And if you break, even though you get their approval, you'll hate yourself in the morning. You know what I mean? You'll hate yourself for doing it. So don't do that. Bend. Don't break. And it may mean that you may lose someone. We have time for one quick question. Anyone?
Does yielding mean being a wimp in life?
Being what?
A wimp in life.
Being a wimp in life? I love it. No, it doesn't mean you're wimpy. It means quite the opposite. A wimp is someone who goes with everyone. The person who bends yields to the highest degree of their love and their compassion, and they give to the very nth degree of that, but never do they ever allow anyone to take them. Do you know what I mean? Take you hostage or you for ransom. You love, you're unconditional in your forgiveness and in your compassion, but never do you lose yourself. And that is the most, what a wonderful thing. You're not a wimp. I like that word wimp. I think that explains a lot of us in life. We have been very wimpy about our attitudes about our spirituality, and there's a difference between, having conviction and having awareness. The one who has a lot of conviction is definitely the wimp. The one who is aware is strong. Thanks for being with us. Thank you. Well, let's talk about a few very major points that we dealt with in this program. Resistance is one of them. If you will look at your life, you will see that a great portion of your daily living has been spent in resistance. Maybe you're unhappy about the way things are, what other people have told you. Maybe you forget that this is a work from the heart, not necessarily from the head. I'd like you to spend some time this week just watching. How much of this time do you spend in your life in resistance? Bend a little bit. Have some compassion. Practice working from the love of your heart. Let things change for you. This is a very important point in our daily living. If we look at it, we will see that much of our life is spent in not only resisting, but being angry and just maybe even downright hostile about life. Why waste our life that way? Why hurt ourselves so deeply, so profoundly? Life is meant to be used in some very loving and, spiritual ways, creative ways. Let's practice this week. Write me. Tell me how you're doing. Practice bending and yielding to the truth of yourself. Yielding to your heart, not to the senses, not to appearances in life, but to who and what you really are. I'd like to know how you're doing. I care. I'm very interested in how these particular lessons unfold in your life because they are meant to be there to help you in your spiritual unfoldment. We're so honored to be with you, and I just want to take a moment to thank you for letting us come into your home to share these moments with you. Have a beautiful day. See you next week.
Every day we take a step, we understand. The closer that we get, we'll find in who we are.
Dr. Penn's wardrobe is provided by the Gentleman's Quarter, located in Del Mar and La Jolla, California.
The left and right, the ups and downs, the darkness.